Welcome back, everybody, to We Are TPM with myself, Kyle Teixeira. Sitting next to me is John Teixeira. As usual, this week we are going to be discussing tips and strategies for maximizing short-term rental income. It's pretty simple, right? I mean, but if you have any, you have any questions, you want more tips, more strategies, or want to discuss anything real estate related or otherwise, give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at ShowMeTheMoney@wearetpm.com. Let's get into it.
Yeah, Kyle, you know what? In the past, we've gotten into the numbers, we've gotten into how to do this and that, but really getting into the nuts and bolts of how and using our experience, our vast experience now over 3 markets that we're in, we've gained a lot of experience on how to do these things. And I'm excited to share it with everybody.
Yeah, because it may sound like maybe we've gone over pieces of this, but we've been vague about a lot of it. And this is more of the drill down into the mindset you need to have to maximize your rental income, because a lot of people get into short-term rentals and they're like, why isn't it working? And it could just be one thing, multiple things you didn't think about. And a lot of that comes from experience. And we're just going to try to give out our tips and strategies for things we do.
Well, you make a good point. I want to remind, before we get into them, I want to remind everybody, when I look at an opportunity for a new short-term rental, we do almost exactly what real estate agents do, right? We run kind of like comps, right? They call them comparables, like a real estate agent would do. And so we're looking at the listings that are around that home so that we can see how the market is, if it's oversaturated, if there's more demand needed. We can tell the vacancy times. We can tell, there's a lot of information that we can see there. And when I do that, I'm always blown away by how poor each of the listings are. Like how many of these things we're about to talk about are not being done on any of these listings.
Yeah, so it's like there's a lot of this that is similar to real estate. It's, sales, rentals, long-term rentals, as far as listings and marketing go. But then, like you were saying, you use comps, but you're also, the interesting thing about short-term rentals is you're not just looking at the present. You got to look at the past. You got to look at the future. Mm-hmm. Things you can generally ignore when you're just doing a 30-day sale.
That's right.
The future is probably the most important piece of that, that analysis. So let's get into it. Let's start with, the first tips and strategies can pretty much be used across any kind of real estate. And I'd say, but it's more important in short-term rentals, is transparency in the marketing. So first, professional photography. Best money you're ever going to spend on a short-term rental. I don't want to spend a couple $100. It's going to make you thousands more than you would make if you go shoot that on your phone.
Thousands.
And I know iPhones
Literally
are really good.
Thousands. And tens of thousands sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to... The front end of your short-term rental marketing makes the whole life of it. So...
Kyle,
and I'll say that all the time.
I don't want to beat this point up, but I've seen people that are making $38,000 for a home that we're doing $80,000 or $90,000 on in a year, right? Or that I think we can, right? And then the biggest difference is the first thing that you said. It's just the marketing, right?
Well, we'll go on and look and see, why aren't they making money? And before I even pull it up, it could be in a list with just the cover photo. And I'm like, oh, that's why.
iPhone pictures.
Yeah, I can tell. That's it. It's like... I skip over it as a comp, just like the guests skip over it as a listing. So, but then we jump into the transparency part. One of the differences is you have to place such an importance on not just painting a picture of the listing, but letting people feel like they know 100% of what they're booking. So, where everything goes, what the rooms look like. I know professional photography can sometimes make rooms look a little bigger. That's not what we're talking about. That you're not, that nothing's being neglected. Like if there's a grill on the patio that they can use, then that grill needs to be in the photos. Anything that they have that will be a part of the guest experience, as far as physical things, need to be in the photos. Because there's 2 sides to that. One, they will be expecting it. But 2, if you have it and you're not showing it off in the photos, then you're not even using that as a piece of marketing for the property, as a potential benefit to someone booking.
And I think to your point, it's just as important to point out what's not there or not available to the tenant, right? Mm-hmm. If for some reason you're refusing to have a hairdryer there, right? I don't know why you would do that, but if you did, then you need to put that in your listing is probably just as important because people are expecting that. And when they book it and show up and there's no hairdryer, that causes way more problems for you than the $19 hairdryer would.
Yeah, and we're not saying to get nitpicky about all your pictures, but just descriptions in the experience. Like, and sometimes like we have some luxury shampoo, conditioner, and body wash in some of our listings. We actually will take photos of that and put that in the listing, just so, because there's a whole bunch of different types of shoppers. So some people only look at pictures. Some people look at the first 5 and read the description. So you want to hit those points everywhere you can. Yeah. is a big part of it. So transparency in the listing, because I've even had a guest show up and say I was upset that you didn't have a bathtub in the listing, and there's not much more of a response other than, well, we have 5 pictures of this bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, there's that's not how I said it, of course, but why would they have been expecting a tub and it's not listed in there? And we have a very open property.
And to your point, though, and while you're preparing our next point, which I think is just as important, if not more important, the people are either visual or they read, right? Very rarely do we find that person that does both of them. So we get oftentimes questions like with our pool homes, we get questions like, are they heated? Well, had you read, you would have seen that it's not heated, right? Or it is heated. But they just see a picture of the pool and they fire off that question. That's just a testament to how they're viewing the listing, really, right? Which is why it's really important that you put that, to your point, everywhere you can. And sometimes even in the picture, non-heated pool, heated pool, so forth.
Yep. And, on short-term rentals, we have gone as far to put like added text in photos just to make things clear. Or like if there's Airbnbs and stuff commonly can be shared. If there's shared spaces, you can really paint a great picture of how they're shared by, annotating photos. So
yeah, and these things, the things we're talking about, they don't just save you money. Sometimes it's time.
They save you time.
Tons of time.
Phone calls, questions. Yeah. And another thing we'll get into booking platforms, but a lot of these booking platforms don't allow you a personal connection prior to booking. So they're just going to skip it. If they don't have clarity, they can't call you. They can at best message you. Some people don't want to ask a whole bunch of questions. If there's too many questions for them to ask, they're just going to move on to one that there's not a lot of questions
on.
Right. So
that's right.
Before we get on to the next point, I think another thing that this ties into is expectations. You'd be amazed at how much it can help a guest experience, your reviews, and the long-term health of your listing, just to send guests an expectations list as far as supplies. Like, this is what you should expect to get when you get here. So if you have problems with it beforehand, don't book it or whatever. But like, this is how much toilet paper and paper towels and shampoo and soaps and all that stuff that you're gonna get. So,
and when do we send that, Kyle?
We send that right after they book.
Yep,
so
that's right.
I mean, whether you do that during, sometimes too much information about what's gonna happen when you get there prior to booking can. You gotta have a balance.
The important information, the stuff that that might cause them to cancel or not. You want them to know that right up front, because we don't.
You don't want them locking up your calendar.
Exactly.
So, like, say they book 3 months from now, you don't tell them till 3 days. They cancel for that reason. You could have saved yourself that booking, because now you're way less likely to fill that space. So,
exactly.
And these all tie in to maximizing revenue, because
there you go.
Minimizing cancellations definitely helps maximize revenue.
What's our next point?
Pricing strategies. So this can be seasonal pricing strategies, but as a whole, having pricing strategies that are dynamic and specific to your market, I think, is the most important. One of the most important factors in maximizing your revenue of a short-term rental. So
this could be split up into 2 ways. We could be talking to somebody like us that has several short-term rentals, right? That we have the means and the means, the know-how, and the ability to pay for a smart pricing tool, a lot like what Uber does, right? But then there's the person that maybe only has 1 or two of these, maybe it doesn't make sense to pay for that smart pricing tool.
Well, then let me describe kind of what that means, because it's, not everybody would know. But most hosts, like I've talked to a lot of hosts, even operators, and a common question is like, especially if they're in the same market, is how much is your listing cost? How much are you charging? And if you have a direct answer for that, that's part of the problem. Yep. I am charging a different rate for every night of the 365 days that are in a year. I don't have a nightly rate during, a lot of hosts will make their rates once a month or every 2 months, look at the market and be like, okay, we're going $350 a night during the week and $450 a night during the weekend this month, and that's it. That's the price. Well, you're setting a pretty flat rate price for the guests. Without getting in too much to the specifics, you say smart pricing. Dynamic pricing is what every other rental agency and technology that has existed for years, such as airlines, hotels, you mentioned Uber, all these pricing tools or pricing things are based on demand, occupancy. That last ticket on the plane is going to be more expensive than the first ticket on the plane. That's right. It's no different in short-term rentals or hotels. If there's a high demand and a low supply, prices increase. That's a huge piece of maximizing your rental.
What if you don't have that? What are you going to do?
Well, if you don't have that, this is the easiest answer. I get that question a lot. If you don't have that, someone else does. And they're pricing around you. So you're at $350. They're pricing at $340. If say there's 2 rentals in the market, they're going to price it at $349 for that night. And they're going to price the Wednesday that you weren't going to get booked before that whole booking at $120, and the guest is now going to stay Wednesday through Sunday instead of Thursday through Sunday like they would have booked at yours. They're going to spend more time there for the same amount they would have got your listing for. That's just a very simple to understand example, but that's happening all the time at all different rates.
And I think the point is, whether you have a dynamic pricing tool or you don't, your point is to know your market, know the demand. However you do that, you've got to somehow know the demand and adjust daily almost. I've got a friend who admitted to me, he manages his own Orange Beach condo, and he admitted to me that he sits on the couch at the end of his day every day and opens up his thing and adjusts his pricing every single day. Mm-hmm. You can do that, y'all, but I don't know. I don't look at my price. Do you look at the pricing that often?
Definitely not every single day. It is adjusted every single day.
It's adjusted automatically.
But it's based on user input and what we decide. But at the end of the day, it's an algorithm doing a lot of it, like all of these companies do. This is the world of technology at this point.
To your point, let's use there's a period, there's a weekend in March. March is kind of the beginning of our busy season in Orange Beach, right? It's the very beginning of it. It's not, the prices aren't summertime peak prices yet, but that's where it starts to kind of creep up. Well, there's an activity that is one of the biggest activities in Orange Beach at Floribama called the mullet toss. And massive amounts of people come in. And if you don't know that, and you just price your March, right, without affecting that weekend, or Mayfest, right, where thousands of people are coming in for Mayfest or in Gulf Shores. If you don't know that those things are happening and how they contribute to the local economy, then you're going to miss the boat and miss an opportunity.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of pricing tools thrive, is they don't necessarily know. A computer doesn't know the schedule of every
but it knows
event,
that a lot of people
it knows
looking.
The data that a high demand and inflow for those dates and in a certain area is coming in, and that affects pricing. It's very important in affecting pricing that way, but it's also the flip side of that. And what people don't think about is like, okay, I don't want to be driving up my prices when things are happening. I don't want to be that guy or that expensive unit. That's fine, ceiling your pricing, but it's almost more important in the low demand times. So Cost of ownership we've talked a lot about, and cost of occupancy and vacancy. Obviously, is the minimum you're going to let somebody stay in your listing and have a risk, but to not lower it when you're not going to get anything. Like there's pricing strategies we use. Maybe we will have a normal rate, but it's 3 days from a weekend and we don't have a guest coming in, and we never want an empty weekend. You can have empty weekdays, but I don't care what the listing is and what area it is. We don't want empty weekends. So those last 3 days, it gets aggressive. It's all right, we're going to get somebody, lowering it. And it works. I mean, that's how you get people. And it's now you're getting a great listing at a cheaper price during a low demand time frame. And that's how it should be, you know.
Yep.
So if you're the only one staying in a hotel or in an entire hotel, it's probably going to be a cheaper room than if it's fully booked. So
it's the same philosophy that we've had this conversation regarding vacancy rates for long-term rentals, and it's the same exact philosophy, except it's converted to a daily rate instead of a monthly rate, right? So
different pace, a lot more factors that go into it. And if we're talking about vacation rentals, you also need to know your seasons. Most vacation rentals have seasons, like Orange Beach. Obviously, people are going to the beach more often during the summer and spring when it's not as cold. That's just common thinking, and it's actually true. So the season we have, our hottest season at the beach in Florida is like May through August. That's summer. That's when kids are out of school. That's when families are traveling for vacations.
Also in Alabama as well.
Yeah, so if you're not the Florida coast, right? To his point, Orange Beach is actually in Alabama. But knowing all those things and pricing around it is not just a tip and strategy. It's a must do. Even if you're doing it yourself, you shouldn't be, especially the amount of money these tools make you just blows out the water how much they cost. I mean,
so and to your point, the worst thing you can do, worst case scenario, would be to set it and forget it, right? If you're setting it and forgetting it, then you're probably not booking very much in the off season. You're probably getting way less than you should in the peak season. And you're doing yourself and all the other listings in that area a disservice.
It's very true, because you also have to look like anything else. You have to look at your market very often. You know, the short-term rental market in the country, in the area, all that stuff. If it's starting to get massively saturated, then maybe you need to know how to adjust your pricing and seasons.
Yep.
Really to anything that's going on.
Yep.
So,
love it. What's our next point?
Well, the number one thing that this isn't the number one, but this is very common, and we've talked about this in a lot of these industries, but I'm going to state it as casting the proper net. But online booking platforms, so commonly, I wouldn't even say it commonly, every market we've jumped into, almost every operator or host that we've talked to says, I don't do
Yep, they're on one platform.
I do not do direct bookings. I do not do Airbnb. I do not do VRBO. I do not do Booking.com.
I ran into a guy in Broken Bow that doesn't do any of those. He has, if you want to book one of his units, you have to do it on his direct booking site. And I feel like it's probably a site that was made in 1994, and he hasn't looked at it since.
Well, and that's very common up in Broken Bow, and that's direct to consumer. You know, like people do that with products. Okay, but you have these simple factors when it comes to online booking platforms. You got where's your audience? Where are people booking at? How much revenue do you expect to get from a booking? And how do you adjust accordingly for those things to where it makes sense? So if you only book directly because you don't want to pay Airbnb their big service fees, and you want this much net for a booking, well then you tack up your pricing on Airbnb to adjust accordingly so that your net is exactly what you want.
Because it goes back to vacancy.
Well, because the guests are going to pay the Airbnb's massive service fees, because on their side, there's guests that are comfortable having that backing of Airbnb who will take care of things if there's something wrong. They don't care about the higher price point. Okay, well now, by only booking directly, you're steering away that audience.
Yeah.
And then there's a different type of people who book on VRBO, or maybe there isn't. But the point is, there is people looking for a listing like yours on those sites. So why are you not on those sites?
Yep.
It's really that simple.
Amazes me.
If you have a good reason, there's certain markets where I will not go on Booking.com. This is rare, but there are reasons, but they have nothing to do with pricing and revenue. So if you have those reasons, go right ahead. But
it's the same conversation that we have with for sale by owners selling their home, right? Mm-hmm. It's exactly the same thing. I can go and do it myself. I can go on Zillow and put it on their listing site. Like, okay, so now you have it on Zillow, and that's it. That is your audience. That's a big audience, but it's not as big of an audience as it would be if somebody was casting that large net and it was on all the sites that everybody uses and not just the Zillow users.
Well, you can always make the argument, not knocking direct bookings. We do direct bookings too. But if that's all you do, putting that website up doesn't get you bookings. You're doing some external marketing. You're paying somebody.
You have to do that, yeah.
Your cost of each guest, there is a cost to each guest.
How are you driving traffic to that direct booking site?
Yeah, compare it to the other ones. And adjust accordingly. You can mark up websites. Like I could mark up Airbnb, mark down VRBO, mark up Booking. If I don't like Booking.com, let me mark it up 100%. Oh crap! Somebody paid double for a reservation. Yep. What? Okay, that made it worth it. So, just be there. So especially because then people can reach out to you, and maybe you give them deals or whatever it is. So it's just costing the net. So because the biggest thing we've seen is also know the rankings in your market. We're in 3 different markets. Every single market has a stronger platform. Like here in DFW, Airbnb is the strongest. Everybody uses Airbnb to book. 90% of our guests here are Airbnb. In Broken Bow, it's pretty much split. It's pretty split 50-50. And that completely depends on your term of stay. If I were to change my term of stay to 5 nights, it's VRBO. And then in Orange Beach, it's VRBO. It's like 80% of the stays. So like it really matters to know. So if you're in Orange Beach and you're not on VRBO, now you're missing 80% of your potential. So
yeah, and that has a lot to do with who's booking, right? Like what generation are they from, right? And how far in advance they're booking will kind of determine what booking site they land on. And your market will determine that. Here in DFW, people aren't planning ahead to come to these events like months in advance. They find out 2 months in advance and they're like, oh, I need something, right? But when you plan a beach vacation, sometimes you plan that a year in advance. Or sometimes you're there on the beach going, we need to do this every year. Let's book something for next year and see if we can get, and so we get that all the time.
That comes into another pricing strategy of how far in advance do you allow bookings.
There you go.
In Orange Beach, we allow them like 3 years in advance because it's true. You do that. There's areas you don't want to do that. So let's get into the next point. The next point would be amenities. So it's a very general statement, but I'd like to call it what's unique. What's unique in your listing? Why am I, especially as things get saturated, why are we booking yours versus someone else's?
Right.
Like, do you have a hot tub? Do you have a gym in your stay? Do you have an arcade game? Do you have a kids thing? Or are you a blank slate listing that only has a couch and a TV in the living room, no decor, no kitchen supplies, and a bed in the room?
Which is okay, but that's going to affect your pricing.
No,
right?
It's definitely going to affect your pricing. It's going to affect your performance when things get saturated because it's about longevity in this game, especially in these days. What I just described worked 3 years ago. It's likely not going to work 3 years from now.
Here's the other economic truth about everything we're talking about also. The more something costs, the better quality guest you're going to get into your home. So when you don't charge enough for your unit or have the right amenities so that you can charge more or whatever, all the things we're talking about, you get guests that can't afford as much. And the reality is when you have a bunch of those guests, you are more likely to have problems. right? The kinds of problems that cost you headache, time, money, and make you wonder why you're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, and that goes back to pricing. But as far as the amenities, you know, these are short-term rentals. So you're giving a guest a short-term experience. You know, you want them to be something that'll make them, the things that matter are the things that make them happy in the short term, right? So one thing we've done recently that works extremely well is smart homes. Because, you know, in my generation, people my age may know a lot about smart homes, but there's some people who have not experienced it all, aren't going to spend the time and money to put it in their own house, but they see that on an Airbnb listing and they're like, oh, that's cool. Maybe I can go get that experience. And this is as simple as putting smart switches and an Alexa in your house, you know? And the audience I just described is huge. I mean, it really is. Because that's what makes that house unique. You know, I could have these two listings are the same, but this one gives me the intrigue of, I get to experience a smart home. Luxury linens, you know, things like that people care about. An outdoor living space with a fire pit, a hot tub. You know, we highlight these unique pieces of our listings in the front marketing photos. It's like, it doesn't start with the living room. Living rooms are pretty hard to make look different. They're living spaces, you know, unless that's where your thing is, you know. Shuffleboard and stuff that like maybe wouldn't be in a house you live in long term, but it's kind of cool to have for a couple days.
Yeah, we talked about this at more length, specifically about Gatlinburg with Joel, right? And we've talked about this in the past about Broken Bow and Orange Beach, because every market is different. Like in some markets, there are certain things that are expected that you definitely would need to have. Right. And if you go to Broken Bow and you don't have a spa in your backyard that's covered and maintained in between guests, you are completely out of the water. You're not even in the running, right?
Yeah, I'd be surprised you make it a year.
Yeah. So
that's like a standard. That's not what's unique. That's if you don't have that up there, it's like
I think Joel had mentioned that there's some things up in Gatlinburg that are like that, some unique things that people expect when they go to the Smoky Mountains. Here, we have to struggle in DFW and our different listings around town here. We struggle to make sure, we go to great lengths to make sure that since we don't have anything like that our listings are unique in some way. They're themed. They're something about them to make them memorable.
Yeah, and make them unique to the other things that are out there. So
right.
I mentioned a gym. A gym, even in the city, is huge, because then that gives you more of like what you get in a hotel. If one of your rooms is a gym, if you have an office, so you have a business center, you have a gym, you have what they would get if they also booked a hotel.
It's one of the mindsets for booking a short-term rental instead of getting a hotel at Hilton is that I want to be able to cook my meals, feel like I'm at home, come home, chill on the couch, just like I do when I'm at home while I'm here for 7 days or 10 days or whatever. Part of that is, like you said, I want to be able to work out like I do every day. I want to be able to log into my office like I do every day. You know, I still need to be able to do the things that I need to be able to do while I'm on this trip, vacation, whatever it is.
High-speed internet.
Huge
in this
it's a must.
Work-at-home economy.
It's not huge, it's a must.
It's literally, you have to do a speed test now on Airbnb, and it is one of the front page items it shows. Then if you don't do that, then go do that, because now they sort you that way. So people are like, well, I don't want to spend the extra $40 a month for high-speed internet. Well, you're losing far more than that. And one of your guests will complain and low rate you for that simple fact. So, and to say you put all the amenities,
all of your guests
probably will, especially if you put a whole bunch of smart TVs in the house and then have slow internet that can't run the smart TVs. It's like, okay, well, this was a fake amenity, which is a good segue into our next point, which is very important. It's managing the guest experience from day one. And you have to set a baseline from day one, and at any rate build on it, make it better. But your reviews and your reputation, because this is a business, is the number one thing that gives you longevity and maximizes your rental income.
You know, you and I know how hard it is to get Superhost. What's the other one called for VRBO? Premier Host. These things are meant to be extremely hard to attain
and maintain.
And for good reason, because those platforms are all consumer-based platforms, right? They're based on the consumer economy and ratings, and that's how you're held accountable, because there's not somebody really telling you what to do. You're held accountable by your reviews.
Yeah.
And so it's so hard to attain it and keep it. There's nothing more important than what you just described.
There isn't, and there's nothing more vague and a big range than what guests expect and what the experience they want from you, right? So making them happy and getting those good reviews is the number one thing, especially on the front end. So
what does that Superhost and Premier Host, what does that do for somebody when they attain it?
Well, for so many things, but for let's just say for continuing your business, new listings get the timeline to success is so shrunk. So like, say I'm a Superhost. Let's just use Airbnb, for example. I don't have Superhost status. I'm pretty new. A brand new host profile, for example. You're probably going to take 3 to 6 months to build enough traction, especially if you have a great listing, 5-star reviews, to build enough traction to be a vetted listing and show up really high on search pages, because then we get into SEO, right? Superhost kind of jumps you there. So now I'm a Superhost. I get ranked high for being a Superhost. I'm one of the top filters used for searching for listings. And even if it's a brand new listing, it says this is a Superhost with 500 other reviews on other listings or whatever it is. And you show up way higher. So the speed timeline to success is like weeks versus months. So that's just one point as far as maximizing revenue.
So this is kind of like an organic form of being one of those sponsored ads on a Google search, but it's organic, so people don't ignore it like they do the sponsored ads. They actually are attracted to it.
Yes, I mean, like when you go search on Airbnb, you can click the filters button, but there's a Superhost filter outside the filters button. So like, it's like they want you to filter it almost, because it's their vetted hosts. And you can lose it. They reconfirm us as Superhost every 3 months based on the last year. So you get reconfirmed every 3 months, reconsidered every 3 months, but it's based on a year's worth of reputation. So you can't mess up anywhere, really. It's based on It's based on ruining or succeeding in the guest experience, but it's also exclusive in they give us perks and the guests that stay with us perks as far as timeline. And so like something happens, I can pick up the phone and be on the phone with somebody with Airbnb within minutes. A normal host may take hours or be on hold. Or
you've been that normal host, so you know that.
I've been on both sides of it. But
so tell us then, how do we get there and avoid that? Like since clearly guest experience, reviews, their feedback are all extremely important, and out of all the things we've talked about, this might be the most important thing that affects your overall the overall amount of money that you make on this investment. What do we do?
You think about every step of the guest experience. You think about the cleaning. So the cleaning is step one. Make sure your cleaning practices and procedures and who you have on your team is just solid. That just needs to be solid. Yeah. That's just a foundation, because people are looking, if you want to make everyone happy, that's hard. That's a hard thing to hit.
But you have to try, though, don't you?
You have to try. But cleaning is the number one thing that if that's a complaint to anyone, it'll be a complaint to somebody. So you nail that, and then you start adding, what are the things that, like I said, you can't make everyone happy, but if you have things in your listing like, black makeup towels make girls really happy because they don't mess up all the linens, right? And makeup remover and these things that may make them, say I always talk to my clients about get a point, lose a point, right? Like, so they may not like the quality of your dishes, but they liked the makeup remover. So you're still net even, right? So they're still giving you a 5-star review. They loved what you gave them robes, so that made them really happy. And if you can give them more points of appreciation than you can give them of non-appreciation, then you win. That's really what it is. And that's a very analytical way to look at it, but do little things that make people happy more than you have little things that make, the off people happy.
Okay. And also, on top of that, I'm sitting here thinking about something that happened last night to us, right? Mm-hmm. You did a great job of anticipating future needs, future problems, and you ordered extra remote controls for our TVs because we have the same TVs in all of our units. And so we had a tenant that for some reason couldn't find the remote. We still don't know why, and we'll figure that out after they leave. But they called kind of upset, right, that there was no remote for this thing. And we were able to go to the office, get a remote, take it to the unit, and make them happy immediately.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes from experience. You'd be surprised how much TV remotes walk off. But like here's an insight into how we do. We use Fire TVs. I don't put Fire TVs necessarily in my own home, but for the operations of the Airbnbs, there's a lot of reasons that I can give you on this. But like remotes walk off all the time. You can use any remote from any room in the house to control any of those TVs. So that's step one. Tell them that so you can get them happy until you get them a new one. There's an app I can send you to control the TV with your phone. There's instant solutions I can give you until I solve the problem. And that alone makes people, all right, well, he solved my problem. He did all he could, really. He was prepared for the problem. He executed on the problem, and then he solved it quickly. So within an hour, we had a new remote there from our office.
Yep.
So I just got a freaking stack of them in our office because I swear one remote a month.
I was impressed. I didn't even know you had all these remotes in our inventory. This is great. We got
a few of these things that happen commonly, and remotes for some reason are one of them. Whether they bring a dog and their dog chews it up and they throw it in the trash because they don't want us to find out, and it may just be in a sheet cushion or something. I don't know.
You never know.
The last one, all right, so we beat that one to death. I can talk guest experience all day because it's specific to your listing. It really is. So make sure that it's all at 100.
And let's repeat it. It's probably the most important thing.
It is definitely the most important because it's the most detrimental.
It can sink you, and it can make you fly.
It's the most detrimental, and everything else we talked about tied to it. Superhost standing takes a 4.8 rating on average. If you don't have a lot of reviews, getting pulled below that is very easy. So even if you do have a lot of reviews, getting pulled below that and that's one of their requirements. So another one that I want to touch on is more boring. We'll go over it quickly, but it is also important, is legal and regulatory considerations and upkeep. That is knowing your laws, keeping up with your laws, and keeping up with the changes.
Wake me up when you're done with this one, Kyle.
Because it's part of maximizing revenue. It changes so often. So when you're starting it, you pay attention to it. When you're running it, you don't pay attention to it. It can affect your revenue. Because when all these cities, if your cities don't charge taxes for them, they eventually will do one of two things. They will ban them in residential areas or in your area, or they will start taxing you for it. And these taxes run from 5 to 10% of your revenue. And if you think 5 to 10% doesn't affect your maximizing your revenue, it does. The city of Fort Worth just put in a new ordinance 2 days ago. So you got to know where it's going, where it's at, when you start and when you end. So these things are different all over the country, all different areas. So that is all I'm going to say. Pay attention to
your point, if you're not paying attention and you're not doing something you should be doing, it could cost you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, right?
And if you break the rules, it could shut you down and cut you off in a day.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
And hopefully by that time you've hit your break even, right? Because all these front end things we've talked about, it's a front end business. You do most of the work, and money spent and all of that is done on the front end. It's an front end investment for a long term profit. So,
well, that's a ton of information, Kyle. Is that it? Is there more?
Well, we could go over every factor in the world, but yeah, I'd say the last one's guest feedback. Ask for it, respond to it, and execute on it. That's the most important thing. Our first guests, our first handful of guests, we let them know they're our first guests, whatever guests they are. We let them know that. We give them thank you baskets to let them know spruce them up a bit, let them know that we appreciate them being our first guest.
Because we want their feedback.
And
we're
then
not
we make
just
it
trying
very
to bribe
clear,
them.
we're not bribing you. We want you to go out of your way. Here's a treat for going out of your way to giving us any positive, negative feedback about your experience so that we can quickly adjust. And it goes a long way with guests because most of the time they're going to leave their negative feed because you basically beg to them for it. They're going to leave your negative feedback if they have any with you privately because you're making it very clear that you're going to quickly adjust it if there's anything.
And they'll likely give you a 5-star review because they appreciate the effort and the fact that you're trying to make it better and that people like being asked their opinion of things. Right?
Oh, definitely. And they like being first. So.
Yeah.
So tell your first 3 guests that you're one of your first guests, whatever. So.
Yeah, most of these guests, they can't stop telling you what they like and love and don't like about a listing when you ask them. You let them know that they're first. It makes them feel special, and so, yeah, definitely that's been a big thing for us to do.
Love it. Well, I've been told our short-term rental advice has been helpful, and more specifics would be desired. So we have tried to give you the specifics. Follow all these points, and you will very much be successful. I think the last one is hiring a superhost and a great operator that knows how to do all these things very well may not be the worst idea. So.
No, you know what? Absolutely not. I say that about everybody and everything when it comes to rental management. Everybody should have a great property manager. That's not always easy to find, right? There's a lot of property managers out there that probably don't have as much experience or aren't as on top of regulations or aren't doing the things. They don't have the systems in place, right? But when you can find one that has the systems in place, that has the expertise, whether it's a long-term rental or short-term rental, they will make you more money. Y'all, go back to episode, I believe it's 2 through 5. We talked about how a great property manager makes you more money. Those episodes are timeless for us because they hold true. They'll hold true in 20 years from now. And it's like anything else, right? Like when you hire a great CPA, they should make you more money. They might cost you $1,000, but they should save you way more than $1,000, right, in taxes.
All this stuff sounds stressful.
Yeah, there's a lot to it.
You got to nail it all, right?
You got to nail it all. Yep. And it's a business. So would you, I don't know. I guess you could set up a business and you can run it yourself, but if you've got somebody that can make you 2 or 3 times more and you don't have to do anything, wouldn't you do that?
Quality of life.
There you go.
It's easier to be hospitable when you have good quality of life too.
That's right.
You might jump down one of your guests' neck one day on a bad day, and then how does that affect the guest experience?
So if you need help, y'all, Kyle's going to give you our number and an email address. But if you're in a different market, if you're in one of our markets, we manage currently Orange Beach, Alabama, Broken Bow, Oklahoma, and Dallas, Fort Worth areas. So if you're in one of those markets, we'd love and be honored for you to reach out to us and ask us more about our services or what we do and so forth. If you're in a different market, still reach out to us. I bet you we know somebody in that market that does exactly what we do as good as we do it. And if we don't, well, we know how to find it. So reach out to us anyways.
And that's how we got in 3 markets, right?
That's right.
So it may be a market we're considering as well. So,
exactly.
But reach out to us. Give us a call, 817-818-9039. Shoot us an email at ShowMeTheMoney at wearetpm.com. Thank you guys for tuning in. We are out.
See ya.